Lord. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the board. Roll call.
37, okay?
Yes.
Archer,
Yes.
Carpenter, McElroy. Yes. Stotsberry,
Yes.
McKee.
Yes. Public participation, is that anything?
Nope.
Move on down. Let you take the floor then.
Yeah, well, today was a big day for the ag department and entire school district. Energy optimizers, Lashley Equipment, and also Al Berger from AJB Engineering, who also helped with that donation, presented the group with the tractor. I'm sure you'll hear a little bit about that. It was great time to have our junior high kids, high school kids, have everybody here. Fantastic. So it was a great way to kick off a very different school year. So tonight, talking with Matt and Eric, and they had a group of students that were actually working on a budget to begin further developing our farm complex. And so no better time than the present. We'll turn it over to you guys and gals.
Actually, Mr. Van Fleet and I, the class, and we'll almost all here, there's a few more. It's our capstone class, and the capstone class is typically a project-based class. They get an opportunity to pick a project, and Mr. Van Fleet and I kind of started talking, and we were like, hey, there's no better project than our FFA budget, and where to go from there. So they kind of took it from them, and we let them talk a little bit.
They've heard us talk.
Yeah, I guess one thing, Mr. Van Fleet, you'll talk about the building first. That was kind of the thing that we had touched base with.
Oh, yeah, we did talk, if you, I know Ed and I talked, haven't had a chance to talk to any of the other board members yet, but I did talk to Rick Snyder at Morgan Building. He gave us a preliminary cost estimate of $137,000 for a barn. I know we kind of backed off of the whole, I know maybe Mr. Lutterwell could speak to this, but there were some code issues with attaching classrooms and all that to a barn facility. So we kind of redrawn the map, and we want to think this barn for the time being. And it's a big one. We drew up a 60 by 100, and original cost estimate, preliminary cost estimate, I should say, is $137,000. You know, I don't think it's any secret Morton's not necessarily the cheapest place to get a building built, and we can explore other options there too. But at any rate, that's where we're at. We've met with him. We've got a preliminary cost estimate. He did indicate, you know, I gave him the old, but Morton, obviously it's got the Morton emblem on it, but we'll advertise for you and put you on the sign if you can cut us a deal. And he said, let me see what I can do, and that's how we left it.
Honestly, I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it may not mean anything, but every year Morton gives away a free building. And he sent me an email out of the blue and said, hey, make sure you're signed up to win this. So.
Hey, make sure we win.
I signed my name up.
Yeah, I signed up me and I signed up the school district.
I don't want to be discouraging, but for the last 25 years, my dad signs up for all the publishers clearinghouse stuff. So far, I've got 3 dish towels out.
That's where we're at with the building, and we did, you know, school kind of started here, and we thought, you know, our capstone students, 3 of them went here, there are about 3 more, isn't there? But we turned them loose and said, hey, we gave them a dollar figure and said, here's your budget. Start out and make a prioritize a list. What do we need and why? So I think the lady's prepared to speak to her list a little bit.
Okay, I'm gonna pick up over here so I can talk a little better. So I just kind of created a little table chart for you, saying like what the,
Yeah, I think that, does everybody have a copy? They can
Yeah.
see?
Okay.
so just like the average cost, what it is, and what its purpose would be, both educationally and for the farm. So I think we pretty much all agree the first thing we need to do is get a building. So with that, there's some utilities, a concrete, and a water hydrant. And then we also said we'd like to have some shop tools and tables and an air compressor in the barn just to make it a little easier. That way we have tools and access down at the barn and we don't have to keep transferring everything from the ag shop. Second on our priority list, we'd like to have some animals to get good and started. So we thought maybe just for starters, the ag mechanics class is making a mobile chicken coop. So we'd like to get some chickens and have some hens. And those eggs could be possibly used for school breakfast. Also, any extras we had could be sold or even used for Miss Harper's Foods classes. And then down the list a little further, I included some equipment that we would like to have in the future, just to make it a little easier, a little more functional, so that one day we can maybe be a self-sufficient farm. And then at the very end of the list, I included some miscellaneous utilities that would make for a little more educational opportunities. For instance, I use the example of squeeze chute with an AI cage. If we got started with just a couple cows, then we could eliminate the cost and expense of feeding a bull for a whole year and maybe teach some kids how to AI. And then along with that, drain bins make it nicer to keep your feed, so your animals always have clean and dry feed. Creek feeders make weaning a little easier, and we are gonna need some fencing for the animals.
Of course, this is a rough draft, and these are ideas and kids put together, and I think they did a nice job. Some other things that we were talking about with Mr. Leffermo right at the beginning with the building, the building cost that Eric and I were looking at, we started with saying, hey, let's price up 40 by 80. And then we said, hey, it'd be nice to have lean-tos on the side. And, Rick looked at us and said, the lean-tos will be more expensive. He said, I can build you a 60-foot building cheaper than I can build you a 40-foot with lean-tos on the side. And that was kind of the reason we went a little bit bigger on that aspect. But we're hoping that our mechanical principles class can do some finishing of concrete, some interior walls, maybe hay mows, and do the wiring in there. That's going to save us the money and teach them the concept during the school year, which is actually part of their curriculum. So those are our hopes to go along with the building.
A lot of the equipment too, like now we're using other ag kids' equipment, so once we get this equipment, I feel like we'll be able to do stuff a lot faster having it here. It'll be nice to use, upkeep on the farm, having a bush hog and everything. The tractor's gonna be amazing. Just basically priorities and stuff. It's gonna be really nice and smooth to be able to operate with this stuff here.
You like to add anything you want? Or nothing?
I don't know what else we needed to, they were saying something about a live auction here in a couple of weeks or a month or so. And so we see good equipment there, like a square bill wagon or something like that, or square baler or something. If we could find good stuff like that to use, they don't have to be new and paying top price for it.
So really just anything that'll help us do what we need to do properly and safely. That's really all we need.
Mhm. I included new prices on this just to kind of show you what it would be maximally, but like Chandler said, it doesn't matter to us. We're just grateful for anything. It doesn't have to be new to work.
Questions? So when you think about the future of the farm, I know you mentioned the building. What things do you see happening next? In your world, curriculum-wise, programming, what we're able to do on the farm, how we're able to link farm and classroom. What do you think the most critical next thing is besides the building? What things do you see yourself doing and needing to be able to do to really take that first step in making that a working farm?
Well, first thing would be, if you're gonna have animals, you're gonna have something to put them in. So you gotta have all that stuff first. You're gonna need all your vaccination stuff, you're gonna need all your water and everything before. So all this stuff here, like not necessarily equipment right now because we're almost through hay season, but when you see all of the stuff that goes inside the barn, like the water and troughs, the electricity, the concrete, that stuff, is probably pretty necessary to keep animals and stuff healthy through the winter months and just keep them vaccinated. And then probably having later, once you get animals, having placed easy access, easy movement, and just having a nice place of room for them. Like fencing. Fencing, yeah.
And Delaney and I were sitting there talking, and I mean, we were throwing ideas around, if we have a building, you know, we've got kids that are interested in things, I've got, urban creeks, we've got that kind of equipment, that literally, we have a barn, we can put in there, we can have animals, we can have sows farrowing, we can have cattle that we're gonna calve down there, sheep, goats, I mean, we can fill one up pretty quick if we have a place to live. And then we teach animals, Mr. Van Fleet has the animal science. And you know, it's nice because we teach a curriculum where we can go do it after we teach it. You know, every aspect of it, ear tag and notch and AI and calving, animal nutrition. You know, I think it's kind of unlimited what we teach here, and then you go right down there and be able to do it.
And I know we've taken field trips for FFA to go down to the research farm, watch the AI process, watch the lambs, see how they take care of lambs. We could just go out here and show them. And we wouldn't have to show them.
As far as curriculum goes, we may not be here to see this, but I personally would like to see every ag class be able to incorporate the farm into their learning somehow. So like if the animal science class goes down and make sure the cow gets birthed okay, or if the greenhouse goes and checks the soil quality, or the ag mechanics builds the pens in the building, I think that hands-on experience helps students learn more than what they can just out of the textbook.
I feel like it's going to open up a lot of new opportunities for people to want to come in FFA too. When they see a farm, they see hands-on projects, they're going to say, that looks interesting, and doing FFA.
So how is the barn laid out? Is it front part of a storage, back half is
Right
animal
now,
shelter? Or
what we kind of looked at was kind of wanted to get the most area under roof for the money. So right now, it's an open structure. The blueprints we have is just a 60 by 100 open structure and we haven't figured out the door system yet. You know, we were talking about some different opportunities, a big door in the front, maybe 2 doors on the side. And that's something that we just need to look at the logistics of what's going to work. But for right now, that was our thought, was just to get as much on the roof as possible and then let the kids maybe finish it step by step.
And then with our budget, like we were in class and we came up under that, like with that budget, we made pens and we kind of sketched it out a little bit, but we got pens on one part and then like on the other part, you got empanada and then you got like back room and stuff, like vet rooms and stuff for your equipment.
So are you using concrete feed bunks? Or just,
We've got a lot of about $10,000 for concrete is what we kind of put into the budget to get some of it under with concrete. You know,
no, I'm saying the feed bunk,
oh, I mean, yeah.
Yep.
And
like the J bunk.
yeah, that'd be awesome. And you know, of course, we present that to you guys and we would take anything into consideration. I think everybody we're looking at has a pretty good agricultural background. So, you know, anything that you guys have as far as input, obviously we'd like to hear. We'll be interested in.
I think, Kevin, that to your original question, I envision part of the barn being concrete, place to park the tractor, place to park some equipment, place to work on something like that, but then maybe the back part of it where the animals are doesn't all need to be concrete or couldn't all be concrete. So
I don't think you want concrete for your end, but that's just
Yeah, I agree.
We talked about the big part would be, I think, important.
bigs maybe.
Yeah, and besides that, we wouldn't have to, I think you're right.
Definitely not, you don't need really concrete for anything.
We talked about the handrail being up top, so if people were to buy like square bills off of us, they pull into the back, and they come in, stop, and we're forced to be tossing square bills from the top, just loading the wagon full for people, and then pull out the front and they're going. Just make it easier and then more room in the barn.
We were talking about the idea instead of selling it out of the field to maybe store the hay, and then we were talking about a hay auction would be a nice idea. And the simplicity of loading people and unloading people would be nice if we had two side doors on the back where we had access to pull trucks, trailers, or even wagons. If we had kicker wagons, we could pull them in the store. So we were just trying to come up with good ideas that would make things easier.
So is there an ag advisory committee? Are you guys working with community folks, or is there a committee that looks to, or a working committee on that?
We have an alumni, but they're not really what you call, I mean, they kind of serve that purpose, Mr. Luckett, in some ag advisory capacity. We're not working with anybody on this farm yet. That's actually not a bad idea.
I was just gonna suggest, not to hold up anything, I don't think that we have to wait. I just think it would be nice if we had a committee of 16 people. You know, if you wanna slow things down, right, you form a committee. However, a project of this size, it's gonna have a starting point and an ending point never. It's probably not a bad idea to bring that group together and talk about a timeline. And we can establish a budget. We're gonna, talk about that some this evening. But then I think having that committee of partners that you can work together to say, okay, here's phase one, and this is where we're headed, and that will lead us to phase two. I think it would be good to have that. But I think if you could take your budget, again, this is not a holdup. You take your budget and you can work with that group to bring together a timeline. Kind of when you're gone, somebody else is going to have to take that project on. And so that just stays with us. That provides almost like a strategic plan for the ag department. Because we don't expect you to be able to do this all at once. We know this is going to take time to get it from where we are today to where you want it to be. But I might suggest that you guys have done great work. Great work. We appreciate
They've
it.
only worked on it for really a week and a half here. They didn't have a lot of time to do it. And
In the future, you thinking about teaming up with like the research farm?
most definitely, as much as communities will definitely be talking about this just a little bit ago. I didn't want to, you want to throw this out here?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna see what we can do.
She was, go ahead, you talk about it.
Well, there's a grant opportunity that we found out about really, really late. So we're gonna try to put something together and get it submitted in time, but, it basically involves partnerships. So, in the meantime, since Matt and I talked this morning, I've been in contact with the OSU Extension, with, Soil and Water Conservation, I'm leaving somebody out.
We talked about the natural resources with our game wardens.
Yes, the
Talk-
game
touch
wardens and
base
so
with
on. And they basically committed to, yes, we're willing to work together to partner on this, try to come up with something. So very infant stages. Hopefully I'll have something more to report on that. But I think definitely the fruits are there, to start these partnerships and really get something going that's going to be long-term and far-reaching. So.
I think, like you said, the partnerships are really, really important.
I envision too that other schools would come work with us. I mean, we've got a pretty good working relationship with Caldwell's ag teacher, for instance, and, I don't see any reason why they couldn't come over and, participate, help, do some learning with us and do some work with us. And, Barnesville's not that far away, and their ag teacher's a former student of mine, maybe we can work with them. So I think definitely, I'd like it to be a place where, if the extension's doing a seminar on knapweed, which we have some up there. And
We're working on it.
It'd be nice if, hey, maybe that community event could be hosted at our farm and everybody benefits from it, so. That's what I envision down, go moving forward once we get rolling. Feel like I'm sitting back behind everybody.
Equipment wise, what do you think you want first?
Definitely bush hog.
And they already got a quote for it and everything, so.
Yeah, we bought the tractor off of Lashley's, and we'd like to support LMH, our other local dealership. Eric and I have both been down to talk to them. They've got a nice discount. Talked to Bob Larry. He's the one that's farmed that for the last several years, and he was the one that recommended, he said, you guys probably need a 12-foot back lane bush hog to take care of that properly. And it looks like we've got a quote, it's about $10,300. And
That's with a
it's,
public entity discount of some kind. Or if they buy it.
it was 12,000 something, and they took it down, I think, right around 10,000, a little bit more. And we quoted the Rhino and the bush hog, very similar type units. So either one of those would be comparably. And I think when we sit and talk about a bush hog, that's probably something that, and we talked about with the kids, they know if we go buy a rake and if a rake's in good condition, we don't have to go spend $10,000 on a rake. If we know it's a good rake and good condition, and we spend half that on a used piece of equipment, that's okay.
What about like next spring, are you planning on planting any crops?
We've had Jay McElroy in our soil water conservation come out and start a conservation plan with us. And what we were just talking about with the knapweed spraying and ditching. They're looking into when it was tiled, if it was tiled, and they're gonna help us develop a conservation plan with the soil types and everything to see if we're capable of putting corn crops down there. That's our first step. And we want the kids to be involved with that too. And it's gonna include soil samples and all those entities that go with it. But I'm not saying that we can't at all. It's definitely a possibility. And we start about corn planters and those types of crops or till drills and seeding, the soil water has components that we don't have to buy those, I guess. But when we were talking about this, the bush hog for appearance and keeping upkeep on it, and the tractor was the priority with the building. And then after that, we were talking, the components of animal husbandry and handling, and then it was kind of the hay equipment. And a mowing machine and a rake and a tedder were kind of a must. And we sat there and talked about the bale machines, and it was round bale, square bale, both machines. And it seemed like we had an opportunity maybe to make the most money making square bales, because a lot of people don't do that. And with young kids, that we had not free labor, but an educational experience to throw square bales.
Captain labor.
Free labor, whatever you want to. We have a lot. Eric and I could not fill the order for first cut. We have, I think we counted 14 to 15, maybe even 16 people that have bought hay off of us so far. And something to that effect. And we couldn't fill all the orders for the first cutting. We have orders for second cutting. We probably square bale lines might not be able to get those all filled. So it seems like that might be a priority and a good opportunity to make money. So those were kind of priorities. When we presented this, it was a farm plan, what we need in the budget, but we want to make money. We want to show our board how we can turn it. What did you say, Mr. Leffing, the other day? Something about taking money, making money. Can't make money without spending money. You have a good phrase for that. Because my son was looking at me the whole time, and
You don't necessarily save by not spending.
okay, so I shut him down on bidding on a heifer the other day to show his best program, and it was $4,500, and I shut him down, and he looked at me after you said that, and said, see, they gotta do the hell, spend that money, it's great money, and I'm like, no, I think it's, but I know that's what you meant, and that's the way he took it too. He was listening. So I don't know, I mean, and again, those are ideas that we're just talking about and discussing. Eric and I keep saying, there's a lot of people that come to you and say, hey, you gotta have a pumpkin patch, you gotta have sweet corn, you gotta have a corn maze, you gotta, like, we're working on it. And, so, yeah,
Halloween's next month.
right? I know.
We're shooting for Halloween of 2021.
So we've got a lot of good ideas. And we thought that, meeting with our soil water and having them help us develop a plan with our students to be part of that was pretty instrumental and educational for them. We don't want to waste all your evening. They presented, you just tell us what you're thinking.
So immediate priorities would be building, fence, property maintenance, equipment, whether it's bush hog or whatever.
I would add, personally, I'd add a side-by-side there too. I think just to get around the property, if we're cutting firewood after they timber it, we're gonna need a vehicle to transport it. So I think a side-by-side to transport tools and students and equipment and feed and everything else would be a priority for me as well.
Does $250,000, I'll just throw out a random number, does $250,000 allow you to get the start that you need in year one of the development of this park?
Stage one? Is that what you said? Okay.
Is that
Wayne, what was the total? Now,
stage one, these 4 items?
yes, I understand, I think what you're saying. She had a total just a little bit ago, and this was just $370,000. And that was just everything new, mowing machine, everything. So, in ballparking, 250 with the building. If we've got a building that's gonna cost 130 with concrete, that's gonna be another 10,
Yeah, that's a start, yeah.
I feel like we could function.
We're smiling too, but we don't mean
No, there's
that
an
way
issue.
about it.
Hey,
Yeah,
listen,
that's right.
everybody,
Smiles, look at it.
No,
everybody up here wants the same thing you want. Quite frankly, we want it by Halloween. Yeah, but there's two things I would probably say. First of all, you're off to a great start. Secondly, you're gonna be inundated by people that have their vision of that farm. And you have to quickly come together with a partner group, your group, and you have to really define that vision, because without one, somebody else is going to define it.
Well, and going back to last winter when we all wanted to go to radio, I know you shared that, and I want the students to drive this.
Yep.
I mean, they're in the driver's seat as far as I'm concerned. Mr. Wentworth and I are here to advise them, guide them, and teach them, but, where the farm goes is kind of up to our students, and that may change over time. The vision now might change in the next 10 years, who knows?
I think too, though, I think, Matt, you remember the interview committee.
sure.
That right there is an ideal partnership
Right.
of community support, engagement. You had faculty, all the key players were at the table. And so I just think leaning on those entities around that table
Sure.
will pay dividends.
Sure.
To support the kids.
We agree 100%. And, we sat there and looked at our board and we feel like we're very supported by you guys, and we'd like you guys to meet that vision too. Where he works at, and you live on a farm, and Guy lives on a big farm, and
J.D. Jones.
right. All have that background, and yeah.
That's me.
So you're asking us, would we form a agricultural advisory farm committee to kind of help us in the directions?
Yeah, I think it's good. I don't think it's necessary just to get started. I think it's necessary long-term.
Grow.
So a great example is the grant that we were just notified of. And we have somebody that sits on that board that was part of our committee that never has once mentioned it to us.
We literally were talking about funding in our business advisory.
It never came
It
up.
was never brought up. We
Um,
literally talked about it.
So I think there's a lot of, I think we have a good handle on where you are today. I think you do. I think we're in a fantastic spot. I'm thinking long-term, the magnitude of that project. I think we're kidding ourselves if anybody up here thought that we were gonna buy a farm, expand it with a teacher, and we're gonna be able to bring it to fruition for $250,000 and be done with it. If we did think that, we were misled. But I think for the starting point, getting that group together, and I think, the two board members that were on the interview committee, was it Kevin, you and Constance? Would be, was typically committee work with board representation could be no more than two. And I think that just really helps bring all that together. It's quite a great next step. And then we can we can talk about budget, and we can try to start figuring out the building first. 'Cause there's no question, the first thing you need a place to land up there. Our feasibility study is almost complete. The biggest issue with the farm property as far as facilities are just the wastewater treatment. So that's another reason why we thought that keeping it to the barn and not that full facility as we looked at initially was probably the way to go. I'm gonna also be sharing some dates with the board that Josh is willing to come down and just spend some time talking about that feasibility and what things can go on our properties and where. I think actually initially, he might suggest that the building is probably located more south than it is north for different reasons, which was a different thing. I'd never really considered that. But then if you get further south and then you can link into the parking, the overflow parking, it's already there for softball. There's some entrance things that are already there, which was a completely different way
Yeah.
of looking at that. So I think that's going to be a great conversation to have. Bring those ideas together with what you guys have been thinking. So
So you're saying maybe closer to the baseball diamonds, softball diamonds than where the building is?
well, don't quote me. I'm just saying that was him just initially. He's not put his full report together, but obviously he started looking further south because of the access to utilities. So.
Yeah, that's nice. Where we live.
Put them on the floodplain now.
He's working with Chastity on that, so.
Okay.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Can answer.
Oh, and the answer.
Yeah, but, so like I said, it's not done yet. You know, so, yeah, there's one area I said, boy, I'd like to bring it down here. Oh, well, wait a minute, it's underwater. Okay, we better move further north. I mean, I think that's what you're gonna find out.
Anything else from us?
So I have contacts for the state type fence. I don't know what kind of fencing you're thinking about putting in.
I think we were entertaining the idea of either back to a high tensile or barbed wire. That makes sense.
And what kind of animals we're gonna have to.
Yes.
If we get into.
I guess if I was doing it that way, I would just go strictly white.
Well, I can't lie to you. I can do barbed wire fence, and I'm good with high tensile fence, and that's where I struggle a little bit. I mean, we've done it before, but woven wire fence, I don't know. And it seems like when you go up and down and.
He's dealing with state type, so.
Yeah.
And he's possibility he would donate a lot of it to fence to.
I mean, I think basically, we're gonna make some division fences at one point, but we just need to get back to that road frontage from really where Gobles is all the way back down to where that barn site's at, would be the first part. And then we would have everything fenced in. We've been around the top, and I talked about, I think everything's good fence on the top, 3 ends, the top and the sides. Just that front end. But yeah, that would be fine.
I'll get that to you.
Yeah,
One of
that'd be
yours.
great. And I think that's something that these guys with the capstone class and some guys around in the afternoons, we could go put posts in the ground pretty easily and do that.
In your shop tools, you got a.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think these guys would be good at that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Chandler, I think. All right.
He starts Monday, so he'll be in the groove of it.
Yeah, we got somebody that works for a fencing company.
I've never built fence before.
Really? You did a good job when you come help me.
But I mean, he's got it all, so
Sure.
a lot of it could be new.
Great job, gang. Great day.
Thank you.
Great day for blue and gold and green.
Well, we gotta say thank you because you kind of orchestrated that.
There's more coming. I got your list now. There was other people running for their truck today. They wanted out. They'll be back.
All right. Thank you guys all. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks for being here.
Next.
Okay, so we had asked, we put on the agenda for tonight to talk to you about locally developed graduation seals. So if you remember back during the board retreat, we talked about the new graduation requirements for an incoming group of freshmen, but they'll actually can apply to all students. There were 12 schools altogether. And students have to basically, so one of the graduation pathways is that they're going to earn seals, and that's how they're going to show their competence. 3 of the seals that the state came up with were what they're calling locally developed graduation seals. And they are seals in student engagement, fine and performing arts, and community service. We had a committee that started last spring prior to COVID-19. We started putting together some ideas, doing some brainstorming, what we wanted these seals to look like. And we reconvened during our PD weeks in August prior to the school opening, and kind of finalized our vision for what these seals are going to look like. So we're going to share these tonight, and then we're going to put these on for October for you to consider for approval. They do eventually have to be board approved. So this is kind of our introduction to that. If you have any questions or anything as we're going through, feel free to ask. And I asked Trisha, and Emma's here with me tonight. First of all, Trisha, thank you for putting the presentation together, getting that started. And I'm going to let each of them talk about their seals. Maybe this isn't working. No, I'm going too far. No, still doesn't seem to be working. Okay, can we just ask you to hit whenever we're, yep, advance this? Okay, you can advance. You're up first, Trisha.
All right, so I worked with Bonnie Flynn, or our teacher, and Doug Mashu, the music and choir and guitar teacher, to put together the fine art seal. The first thing that we talked about was what is the seal requirements for all the programs combined. So they would have to have some sort of combination of 4 credits of art, theater, high school or CCP, band, guitar, choir, and a 3.0 in each of those courses. And that would just be, they could do any combination. So they could have 4 credits of art, or they could do 2 credits of art and 2 credits of theater, whatever kind of combination they want to get the 4 total credits. If they were in an outside fine or performing arts class or event, it could be considered with prior approval and a verification of documented hours, and it must meet an additional requirement, 120 hours per credit flex. So if somebody was in a dance program or something like that outside of class, they could flex that as a credit hour for the school, since we don't offer that. They also need to, I can't really see this on the, wasn't a very good slide to choose there, but they also have to choose at least 1 cultural event with prior approval. And that would be something like going to a museum or a play, a crafts festival, something like that, to get that cultural experience outside of that. Go ahead, Trenda. For theater, students must choose a design or a performance path per credit hour. So each year they would have to choose if they're going to do something in performance or design. Performance, they must perform in at least 1 play per credit hour, or if they were not cast, they could perform 2 monologues, 1 comedic and 1 dramatic, for an audience of at least 5 people, including the performing arts teacher. And in the design area, they would design in at least 1 design area per credit hour and display the design for public display. For art, students, in addition to the overall requirements, students of art would need to have a portfolio of work that includes at least 4 pieces of work for each credit hour, and a submission of those pieces for gifted review and or art shows. And then for music, we had 3 areas: band, choir, and guitar. For band, they would need to perform in all concerts and performances that are scheduled by the director per year, plus earn a superior at OMEA state competition, or earn a superior at the solo and ensemble contest. For choir, they would need to perform in all concerts and performances that are scheduled by the director per year and earn a superior at the solo and ensemble. And guitar, perform in all concerts and performances that are scheduled and earn a superior at the solo and ensemble. So we wanted to make it attainable, but also they would need to have passion and desire to to get the seal. So that's, and then the classes that we offer a theater 1, 2, 3, and 4 and CCP theater, band, choir, guitar 1 and 2, and we have art 1, advanced art, crafts, photography, ceramics, yearbook, and sculpture. So they have a broad range of classes that they can take to meet those requirements. Do you guys have any questions about the fine arts seal?
So just a couple of comments on seals in general, and this is probably a Beth question later, but when we had our board retreat, we talked a little bit about seals. I would anticipate when we started thinking about which ones are locally developed, we started thinking about which ones appeal to certain groups of kids who might prefer this option over another. So when you think about the fine arts seal, which is, I think, very unique, you also think about students that really excel and want to pursue those opportunities. They might not have that comfort level or that background in other areas. So I think this is just another, I think this is fantastic. And Trish, I have to tell you, the work you've done over a couple of years ago, we couldn't have considered a fine arts seal. So thank you for that. But there is, I would say, a niche of students who really excel, and this is their thing. So when you start looking at the local choices you have with the things that are already in place, you try to think about what groups of students aren't we currently serving. Is that a fair statement?
Right, that's one of the things that I like about the fine arts seal, because I feel like that's an area of improvement that we need to grow in, is our fine arts program. And so giving that goal for students, even starting in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, say, hey, when I get up to the high school, I can work towards that seal. I think that they'll be more passionate about trying to sign up and take those fine arts classes that are going to be offered in the future.
And when we look towards, attaining a rigorous set of standards across the curriculum in every single department, we're also looking now at students who, once they complete these portfolios, it's a very small step then towards a fine arts honors diploma, which the state of Ohio offers. And we really haven't had a lot of students pursue that, primarily because many of them took the hours, but there's a portfolio piece that goes with it. And so we're allowing them to do that portfolio now for multiple purposes. So they can now attain the honors diploma in fine arts, as well as attaining the seal. And with the locally developed seal, so as I said, the 12 total, right? They have to earn 2 seals, and one of those has to be a state seal. And I know you guys we've talked about those in the past. The Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal is one of those, for example. One of them must be a state seal, but the other one can be any of the other seals. It can be 2 state developed, or they can use one of these locally developed. And to reiterate what Tricia was saying, we really tried to make these seals attainable for kids, but not a gimme. And I'm going to be very upfront and say that when we went and looked for samples of these seals, what other school districts were doing, nobody's doing this. They're making them very,
It's a theme.
basically they're handing them to kids so that they can say, yes, I got the seal. We did not want it to be that. We wanted it to be something that meant something. We're also working on a badging program. Are you going to talk about that later?
A little bit, we're getting there here.
Okay, I won't bring on your break.
Keep going.
We're also talking about a badging program that Justin and the PBIS team have been working really hard on. And we thought this could also be a piece of that these seals can become part of that badging as well, so that once they attain that, that's something that now they're going to be publicly recognized for having achieved. So that's just kind of a little bit of background. And you'll kind of see as we continue talking about these, like with the fine arts, it is attainable, but as she said, they have to have passion. They have to be willing to do that work, because they're not going to be able just to have it handed to them. And I think you'll see the same as Emma starts to talk now about community.
And like Beth said, it has been hard to find an example. Several school districts have actually contacted us and said, hey, you got those seals, right? Those locally developed, we really like to take a look at what you have. So we haven't shared that up yet.
Well, they're approved yet.
They're not approved yet. We haven't shared anything. But community service seal, you can look them if you want. So basically that one, a student's going to have to complete 120 hours, 30 per year. And you can see down there, we prorated it for districts, for students that are moving maybe into the district from another district, so that they can attain 30 per year. And along with that, and we put an and/or in here to complete a pre-approved community service project. We were kind of thinking like an Eagle Scouts project. A student that is performing that, working on that, is going to have well over 120 hours into a project like that, or something of that nature. So we're going to look at that and approve that as a committee as those come up. Oh, and I should note too, all students are going to have tracking forms for each of these seals. And so they will have to have somebody sign off once they've completed the community service. And you can see here, these are just examples of things that will count. Scouts, 4-H, Key Club, church. Anything that's raised, a fundraising event for the good of the community, with the students participating in that. And then the third one there, they're helping like an elderly person, not a relative. Could be household chores as long as they keep track of that. Visitations at the nursing home. Working at the library, volunteering at the library. And then at the bottom, we put could include mandated community service. Could, that will be
We had a lot of conversation about that one.
And that'll be a case by case, decision that we make. We wanted to try to count that if we can to make that situation positive for that student. Make it a learning experience for them. So if they could gain something from that and not view it as a punishment, we want to turn that around. Then the next slide is things that will not count. So membership in a service organization, you can't just say, well, I belong to this, so therefore I get the community service. You can't receive compensation for it. Teacher's aid during school time, so if you're helping out a teacher, that won't count. And then the one there, the membership in school band, sports team, and the drama production, each of those organizations requires their students to do some type of community service. So they can't double dip. So if they have to do 20 hours for band, they can't count that 20 hours for their seal. But they can work an additional 20 after they meet the first 20 and count that. So anything above and beyond the normal expectation can be counted for the community. I think that's, yep.
Okay, the last locally developed skills is student engagement. Go ahead. Student engagement basically is focused on student participation beyond the academic day. There's a lot of research that shows that students who are invested in extracurricular, who are involved in activities, do better academically, socially. They have a greater success rate in terms of graduation and successfully entering college and gaining employment. So we wanted to make sure that this was something that our kids could do. So what we decided, in order to earn the engagement seal, students must complete 6 seasons of participation in a combination of approved extracurricular activities. And you'll see a season is defined as a set period of time. So within a year is basically what we are looking at. So football season, that's pretty obvious. It starts at the beginning of the season with the first practice. It ends with the championship when we bring home the gold. That's an obvious season. 4-H might look a little different. It generally begins in the spring. Students attending meetings, going and doing work in the clubs in the summers, going through judging, being at the fair, usually concludes sometime in the fall. So whatever that season is for that activity, they complete 1 season. So 6 seasons total, and it can be in any combination. So for example, a student who plays football for 4 seasons and is in 4-H all 4 years, they have 8 seasons completed. It's kind of how we were looking at that. And the other piece of that, the reason we went with 6, is that it requires them now to participate in more than one activity. So you can't just play one sport and get an engagement skill. You have to be doing more than one thing. Next slide. In addition to that, students, in order to get the seal, must document 20 hours of additional participation related to that activity that goes above and beyond the general requirement. For example, students who are on the football team have an opportunity to do online coursework and trainings for leadership through the NFHS site. Students, for example, who are here, let's say, a good example, Kendall Mackey runs cross country. In order to get that seal though, for cross-country plus her other activities, she has to go above and beyond. If she participates in our activities fair, she did a presentation. Last year created a bifold board, talked to incoming freshmen about cross-country, what it looked like. She didn't have to do it. It wasn't required by her coach. It was above and beyond. We talked about the example of Miss Carpenter, who was on our Culture Shook team, which a lot of kids are on Culture Shook. That in and of itself, just getting to go on the bus and go on a trip, isn't necessarily above and beyond. But me saying, will you go to the, what was it called? The student activities fair for OSBA. Will you go there and present with me? That's above and beyond. And so those are the kinds of things we were looking at. Basically, those have to be approved in advance by either the student engagement SEAL team, one of us probably, or the coach or advisor for that activity. Next. I listed on the next slide, these are just some examples that we have here. We wanted to make sure we were including things like robotics, esports, those things that kids who traditionally aren't involved are starting to get involved in. Culinary Arts has a catering group. Yeah. Julie Harper, actually her kids will cater or hire. So if those kids are a part of that, they absolutely can count that as an activity. So. So, questions, comments?
So this is just starting for the freshmen.
So basically the way that the new graduation requirements work, the incoming freshman is the first group that has to do this. However, any class can graduate with these. And so we're putting them in effect immediately. As soon as they're approved, we will start collecting data. We actually have a system now. We've kind of changed how we do on target. So our teachers are now going to stay with their kids all 4 years. So your freshman on target teacher is your on target teacher now until you graduate. So they'll really get to know those kids. They have a set group of students, and then they're going to have paperwork that is basically online documentation that students have to keep track of all this. It's intense tracking. And those teachers are now going to be able to help those kids and make sure that they're getting all that documentation completed.
How that tracking that the kids have to do on their own, how does that get approved? Because we had this opportunity. Oh, yeah, I did 2 hours of evening section.
Right. Now, with the engagement, basically with all of them, they're going to have a supervisor, a coach, or a teacher of some sort that has to approve it. So, for example, Emma and I own all the documentation, so the kids can do it, but we own it all.
And we keep track.
So we'll be tracking it.
You guys have to sign off.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, and there's forms they have to fill out, like, for example, for the community service, they have to do a project. They have to fill out paperwork ahead of time to have it pre-approved, and then their supervisor, whoever's been helping them with that, has to fill out paperwork as well. So
and like there are a few times, for example, Craig Sebring came to me earlier in the week. He said, hey, there were some kids that were here. They helped me set up some stuff for cross country. I don't even know why they were here because they're not in cross country, but he said, these are the kids. They worked about 2 hours making sure everything was set up. Can we count that as community service? So as long as you're willing to sign off on it, it's not part of their normal duty, then yeah, we'll count the hours. So there were 4 girls, I think, that already had 2 hours. So.
And so this year, the seniors will be required to complete 30 hours. Right. So we kind of prorated that. So they have 1 year that they've known about this, so 30 hours.
And this is year 1, so it's going to be a little experimental. We'll have to see how the documentation and all that kind of thing works, but that's the plan for now. Questions? Thoughts?
I think it's gonna be interesting.
Can that go even farther than what you had listed there?
I'm sorry?
Your community service, can that go even farther than what you got listed?
Absolutely. So most of the things that we listed up here are just what we came up with in our small groups. Basically, any ideas the kids have, they can bring it to the committee and say, hey, I'd really like for this to count for community service. I mean, obviously things like Habitat for Humanity, and there's all kinds of things that they could count.
So
A
if
lot
I
of
use
church
the
groups
kids at
do
the
it.
fire department, basically all I gotta do is sign off on it for them,
Yes.
if you guys approve.
Yep.
So remember how we got,
That's a good idea.
remember how we got seals? Seals came as a result because Everything was so testing heavy. And we cried throughout the state and we pleaded that kids have many intelligences beyond what simply shows up on a test. And so the seals are what legislature came up with to help address some of that. So I think what I'm really pleased with our group is, even when you had choice in the seals, you really tried to pick some things that were unique to groups of kids that may not have had a specific option that align. These kind of hit every group. And we'd like for every group, we'd like to think every graduate would meet the community service seal. I think that would be a goal we would have. So, good stuff. Good work.
Thank you.
Given a different set of.
So the approval, should we approve it tonight?
We don't have to. We can do it on Thursday.
Yep, your hand.
Thanks.
Good job, baby. Brenda, if I'm next, I shared one with you as well.
Okay.
I mean, can we go in front? Because those kids inspire to.
Well, we've kind of talked a little bit about that. So in order to earn the seal, according to the state, it has to be earned in high school.
Okay.
However, I absolutely think it would make sense to start transitioning those kids in. There's no reason middle school can't do a community service day or something like that to get them started. Exactly. So they may not count in terms of the seal, but I think it is going to be really beneficial in terms of getting them prepped for what's
Down
coming.
to
So, thank you.
like number 21. You know,
21?
Yeah.
There's that many?
Oh, there's 27, I think. Keep rolling.
You tell me when.
20, yeah, okay.
I have no page
So
numbers.
what this was truly the third 9 weeks last year. It's kind of when everything poo-pooed out. And,
That's the last time you sent her anything?
Trenda, yeah, right there.
Right there?
And then we continued to use this document at the end of the third 9 weeks to then begin the building goals and the 3 different high schools that work groups expectations for this year. So we have 3 groups. We have high expectations, and that's the first one. One thing we want to do with that group is we want to expand the 3R rubric down into the middle school and work with, they also have a high expectations group. So we think that that needs to look different in first grade, but they still need to be thinking ready, responsible, and respectful. So it may look different, but we want to incorporate that and move it down so that the whole district is working that direction, if that makes sense. Expansion of ACT prep data from Mrs. Warner. You know, we're not meeting the expectation of state average on the ACT. Whether that's students that may not have the aspiration of college, but then when she separates out and we're competing against people that want to go to Ohio State that we know do want to go to college, we're still a little low there. So we're trying to address ACT, tracking of our performance index. There's another measure on the state report card that we got, 3, we've got to get under the understanding that the 3 is the floor, not the ceiling. Getting a 3 is what you should be able to get. That's a minimalist expectation. But to score, I need a 4 or a 5. And that'll help our prepared for success rating, the 3 locally developed grad seals. Now, English 9 doesn't necessarily have a test, but I still think we need something in place for that English 10 teacher so that we know coming across from you to me that this person's performing at this level, expect it from them. You understand? So, and then PBL and staff development, moving from a level 1 to a level 2 to a level 3. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Yep, in a minute. Tracking gifted PD and how we're serving students. So we were in watch for our special ed population. And I thought, my initial thought was probably what everybody else's thought is. But it came back that our gifted population was the issue. So we have all 9 core teachers are trained and gifted before school started. Every kid will be served. That will not happen again. So that was something, and I'll tell you how we kind of track them in a minute. Go ahead, Trina. So that is that group's focus. Then we have an extra help group's focus. I'm sorry. Move that.
Remediation in test areas, that's they can retake the test, but if we feel like if we don't provide them intervention for question number 3, what do we do for the kids that didn't get it in Algebra 1, then just retaking the test we're just weighing the baby over and over again. So we've got to do a better job there. Beth mentioned that the gifted students were part of the draft. So now every teacher in the building knows what area or areas each kid that has been identified as gifted, what area that is. So if they're identified in history, Sean Miller and Stacy Laura, know. There's no question what people are identified as now. And then we drafted them in such a way through their on-target group, and then in yellow it says we're going to grow with that group. And that's part of Emma's tracking piece. Get that cohort of 15 people that Guy's responsible for the next 4 years, and I'm tracking your community service. I know what your interests are. I really get to know you instead of just shaking the boggle machine every year and get different people. So they're going to stay with their group, continue to refine and do better with the blitz. ICU, consequences for being on the list. That ICU is when you have a missing assignment, nobody's sick or hurt or anything like that. Parents that freaked them out at first. Lifeguard expectations for the study hall teacher. I do have someone assigned to study hall. They don't cover that study hall. Mr. Hill or Mr. Withrow, they're covering the study hall, but that allows Emma then to go pluck somebody off that ICU list and be like, we're getting one thing done today. I'm going to help you do this. And that's something we're using. Tyler Engel, he's up here in 7th period, and he's got a little bit of freedom there, so we're flexing him around as an extra special ed person to help us read a test or do whatever, but perform those lifeguard duties. Efficient time management, movement during the OT, that's kind of I just want to be efficient with that 40 minutes. I just don't want you to waste it in the bathroom or people travel and say, I got to go see Guy, and then they take forever to get there. We efficiently need to move people. I mean, it is free, where every teacher's free and every kid's free, but I gotta be able to hold you accountable to where you're going, what you're doing. Do grades reflect scores? I think we're getting way better at that. If you're getting an A in algebra, you darn sure better be getting a 4 or 5 on the test. And that's something that we continually talk about. Career exploration, community service, SEAL tracking, we can talk about that. And then drug-free hire me is already moving. The random sample test in September happened, I don't know, last week, whatever, for Eric's normal random, right, for extracurricular. And we just announced any senior wants to go out and get drug-free hire me. And you want to jump in this time? Go do it. And we had kids just truck down there and do it. It was awesome. And so kids are volunteering to be part of that program. Yeah. The active engagement group, high schools at work, PBIS, develop a badging system. You heard about that. So here's what the badging system, my vision of what badging system looks like. So you got the star up there. I see this like I'm so football related. I'm kind of in that mode anyway right now. But I see it like helmet decals almost. Like the helmet, but we want to create a sticker, well not a sticker, but actually a magnet that goes on your locker that if you earn one of those seals, it may have it may look like the fine arts. They've earned that, and that's going on their locker. So I want to decorate the lockers up with as many Buckeye leaves as I can get. That's, you get it, right? So I want to helmet decal the lockers out with a badging system. And I also kind of want to maybe do the teacher doors as well, starting with where I graduated from. I want there to be some teacher buy-in as well as to things that I think of Karen being Google certified potentially. That should be on her door. Like that's an extra above and beyond thing that she can do. So I think that's good. Funding PBIS and bringing the Kona Ice machine in and things like that. So they work on how do we fund that? We want to do that, but how to fund it. Dr. Bobby Moore would say that if 80% of the student body is engaged beyond the school day, you're going to move the needle. It's going to move the needle positively. So one of our goals later, we want 100%, but he says 80 is kind of the move the needle spot. So we think with the different seals and the different niches like we were talking about, we're close to that number, and they're going to track that number for us. Locally developed seals, and Leader in Me, not for that to be the last thing up there, but Leader in Me and the Lighthouse kids met today, and the teachers met today, and the rollout of Leader in Me starts Monday. So 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teams and People. So it's pretty cool. So that's a lot to bite off. That's just the high schools and work groups. Then our building goals, and you'll see some commonality and common language in that, is the ACT score has to improve. How do I know that the test that I'm writing, whether that's a geometry test, is rigorous enough to pass the geometry assessment for Ohio? And also, is it rigorous enough that I'm moving the needle for ACT? We have to work at that. That has to be everybody's problem, and I know we have an ACT prep class that fits for some and not for others, but that can't just be, well, we got a class for it. No, it's gotta be everybody involved in moving that. So that's one of our goals. 2, what's 2? 2 talks about PBL. Let's back to that question. Our second goal is by Christmas to have a tier 1 PBL is you have a project-based learning. You have a STEM project, a strategies that engage the mind project within your own classroom. That you're thinking STEM in your classroom and it's just in your deal. So when you translate in the second semester, we're going to do another one that's a level 2, where now I might partner with Jarvis and my kids might get out and learn to do something in graphic design that also comes in with my history class or whatever the case may be, but I'm involving now 2 different disciplines. And then when you get to level 3, like Trish did with herbology, right, last year, then that becomes more of a school-wide initiative, multiple teachers. That makes sense? So that's how 1, 2, and 3. And then the third one, 100% of the students will, what does it say? I can't attain state determined competency for Algebra 1 and English. We gotta have 100% on the floor. It's the floor, not the ceiling, 100%. 100% of students attain the IME's jobs readiness seal. Beth talked about that. Then we got the community service hours in there, and we've kind of maybe refined that a little bit in that seal, but that is also part of the goal. And then 100% of students will create an individual graduation plan. It's not something we just say, it's an actual living document that's in their student portfolio. We're going to work really, really hard to have all of our electives and stuff ready by Christmas so that when February comes around, or January, February, whatever, Beth and Emma have about 50% of the population each in terms of guidance. They can sit down with the families. Here's our schedule. Let's schedule so that we don't have 300 schedule changes when we have 300 kids in the building or whatever. It's just, there's no reason for that. If the individual graduation plan is a real living document, then they shouldn't have to do that. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, 4, that's the last. 4 is the last one. 100% of staff will implement the Leader in Me, starts Monday. 100% actively engaged in the school community beyond the regular school day. That's where Bobby says 80% moves the needle. Let's shoot for 100 and see what we get. 100% of students will fully participate in the badging program, students and staff. And that's what we've talked about that. So I think that's a lot to bite off. That's a big lift. There's a lot happening.
High expectations.
So that's all on my pool. And then I wrote down 3 things on the back of it. I talked about the gifted PD. I already mentioned that. I wanted to also mention that about 5 years ago, we had 182 kids in the building. Today we had a fire drill the other day, 241. And then when I steal some of Chad's, I got 300. Right? Well, you go. And then just an FYI, homecoming will be on the 5th. We're going to crown the queen on the field. We're going to give the court, the girl a ticket, obviously, and then 4 family members and their father's going to walk the dog. So I don't involve another kid and 4 more tickets and it's the last. It's potentially the last home game. So I want you to know that we'll be crowning the queen on the 25th versus the 25th. So we're still going to pull that off. Okay? I'm out. No dance. No, we're not dancing yet. Postpone. We'll revisit when potentially I don't have to do this. Questions? Comments?
If you just listen to that, it resonates individuality, choice, options. Most of us sitting around the table did not have that at the point in time in which we went to school and graduated. It was very much generalized towards the center, and there were certain boxes. If you didn't fit the homeschool box, you chose another option, and now it's an effort to create options for everybody. So that was consistent from your seals to your plan. Good work.
Chad?
I shared a couple documents with Trenda. I'm just gonna go through them real quick, but I tell you, the more I thought about it, Trenda, I just shared a form with you, and I think it will make more sense too. It's actually a spreadsheet, you know, it's gonna kind of drive what we're doing. Everybody leaves. And I would say when you think reset and refocus would be kind of our theme. You're gonna notice some things in here. You're not gonna see a STEM goal right here for now. You're gonna see a focus on student achievement. You're gonna see a focus on core instruction. And I think this is, if you go to the second tab, because I think this makes sense. What we are trying to do, and I've got my literacy plan here, I'm gonna give you a copy of. There are tabs, I'll share it with you, because within the tabs, there's more information, because they're just like hot links. So here's our literacy plan.
I have a question, not to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
In general, how are our teachers doing? Just.
Well, I was going to touch on some of that too. You know, first of all, our kids are doing fantastic with math. It is not, you guys, if you've been to a football game, it is not the issue that I thought it would be. I thought it'd be kicking and screaming, a couple preschoolers, but, that part is going well. We're adjusting. It is hard some days when you're, I know there's days, and I think Dave would say the same thing. I'm out in the building, and I either go out on the playground so I can take my daggone mask off, or I go back to my office for 5 to 10 minutes to take my mask off.
But at times, I mean, I just look at our teachers and they're juggling a lot of things. I mean,
The biggest thing, and if you guys are hearing anything, the biggest thing the challenge is remote learning for a kindergartner or a first grader is a lot more challenging because, and I think parents are still, and how many more came back today? The numbers keep going down, and it's not that it's not a quality, but you know, these first 8 days, it's been about, and teachers did the right thing. They shared their extensions. Well, now that they have their extensions, they're getting direct calls right into their own. Hey, I need tech support here.
Yeah.
So they're struggling.
Yeah.
They're learning while that camera's facing them. So that level of stress is up here. Then you get the phone calls coming in. So what we're going to do, what I'm going to do next week and the following week is I'm going to have like 2 or 3 opportunities for our remote learners, a mandatory meeting to come in. I want you to see how this is, and I want to talk to them about, and I keep sharing my cell phone, I keep doing everything, but they still call straight in. And so that's stressful, but like this morning, we focused our 2-hour delay. We spent an hour in our action teams looking at the building plan, giving everybody an opportunity to provide some input. But then we really spent an hour talking about some of the just troubleshooting, what's working for people as far as remote learners, because we spread them out across the building. Instead of putting them in one spot, they're spread out. And we try to keep that balanced. But I'll tell you, I mean, even like I was in Mike Wade's room, and I don't think he'd mind me saying this. If you think remote learning and Mike Wade, And he's like, hey, Chad, can you help me? I got Lucas on the phone here and I'm trying to teach. And Mike jumped right in though. But it's just stressful. It's real stressful with the tech piece side, and it's just new.
Yeah.
But a lot of the teachers are, I've got this lesson and I'm teaching here. Now I gotta go sit over at my desk and do this. And I said, things are gonna happen, but like Dan and I we went into our long-term subs room, and she explained it best. That's what I've been trying to tell people to kind of do, but they're fearful that camera's going to be on and something not going to go right, or you're going to have Jimmy over here who's going to do something. And but like what her name's Hunter, and Hunter has her camera back, and a lot of the teachers are starting to do this as they get more comfortable. But she's treating her kids just like they're in a classroom. So, if guys remote and she's going over a lesson, boom, she'll call Guy, hey Guy, what's your thoughts on this? Where some people are treating it as two different lessons. And, and I told them the reality is they're not going to be able to do everything you can do in your classroom. And they've got to understand that. But it's drinking from a fire hose, and I'm trying to give them tablespoons of stuff on top of it. But we're getting there, and but it's we're getting there though. But we're just trying to support each other. That's the biggest thing. We met in our action teams this morning, and while our lighthouse team for Leader and me was meeting, and Greg said, you know what, we got to pull this together. So I was like, Greg, you need to come out here and you need to tell everybody this, and not just from Dave and I. And so it's it's stress, but I mean, we're in it together, and and the alternative of being home and 100% remote, I'd rather have our kids and dealing with the stress, and I think they would too. And but it's good. The playground's getting more use. The outdoor classrooms, you're seeing things like that, and people are thinking outside the box. So anyway, what I've shared with you is our building plan. We've got three goals around high expectations, student engagement, and system of support. But all of that is really going to be driven by this form. And if you'll scroll down a little bit, Trenda, you'll see and this is just a sample. But one of the things,
Keep going.
yeah, that's good right there. That's good, because what we're trying to do is through our TBT process and talking about our 3 questions. If you go back to our 3 questions, I know you've heard Dan probably say for 8 years now, what do we want kids to know? How do we know? And what do we do for those who do and do not know it? And we're trying to have the same opportunity and the same experience in every classroom. So what this form has done is, this is a template, and I just filled it in for them. I did add remote learners and student with disabilities, because I want to track this data for our kids. And this is just fake data I got in here right now, but because this is my template. But through those goals, you'll see around our goals are about making data-informed instructional decisions, collaborating, and problem solving. Focusing on the data to drive our instruction is really our 3 goals we got. We're going back to the basics. Our foundation, we have STEM, we have some great things going on, but we have to get our test scores, and not just test score, our kids have to be better readers and mathematicians. So through the goals we have in driving this, we met yesterday with the majority of our TBTs and shared with them how we're going to use this form. Now, right now, I said this is for 10 questions. So let's say you give a pre-assessment, and this is where your kids are at. All right. you can immediately see here's the grade level, and then this would be individual teachers. Okay? So you can see immediately, and now this would be a pre-assessment. But it doesn't have to be, the way this form is set up, it doesn't have to be 10 questions every time. It could be an exit ticket like Justin was talking about. Maybe we look at whatever question 5 is, and now we see that it's our lowest area for this particular pre-assessment. So we're going to pick an intervention for that because that's our lowest area. So we're going to intervene with everybody on question 5. So then maybe they got another column they'll add over here, and they're going to track with an exit ticket, select some interventions or select strategies that they're going to use, and they're going to do it together and hold themselves accountable, and then they're going to track their data. And that's where this comes in. This is individual teacher. And, what I've told them is like, listen, and go ahead and scroll down, because you'll see, so here they're going to analyze their data, have discussions around it. If you scroll down, so after maybe it's a unit assessment, it could be a quarterly. Then down here is going to be after they've taught it. This is where I hope we really start looking at is, so again, looking at our mastery, and we want to get to where when we have these discussions, if I'm on this team, whoever the teacher is in red, I need to be talking to, especially if I'm the teacher here in green. All right. And I need to be saying, okay, our kids are equal. We can look at where we started. What are you doing differently? Even though we decided on these interventions or we decided on these strategies, there has to be something different you did. And
Chad, let me interrupt you for a second. So Chad inherited an issue that's going to take a while to correct. The one place that we're large enough to have a true collaboration is in our K-4, where we have 4 teachers. They all do reading, they all do math, they all do whatever. Yet we weren't even using the same assessments, and we weren't even assessing at the same time. So the one advantage that group had where 4 of us come together, I'm green, Chad's red. Dude, what are you doing that your kids are knocking that out of the park and my kids are straight? We couldn't even have those common discussions. Because what's happened in the past, we've supported everybody's individual whim.
Yeah. And even today in our TVT, we had 2 teachers of the same grade level. And they said, you know what? And we're guilty of it. Her and I are good friends. And we may be talking at midnight, say we're going to do this or this with our kids. And we come in and either the other side of the hallway or whatever, and we realize, we didn't mean to, but it just doesn't happen. We have such a unique experience in every classroom in many cases. So this is to try and identify what's really working and replicate it so we have so I get the same experience regardless of the classroom I'm in. Perfect example is today when we got it. I won't use names or anything, but have a set of kids that wanted to be remote, so they wanted to be with the same teacher. Then they decided to come back, and now they don't want to be with the same teacher, and so we're splitting them up. And the first thing was said, well, they'll have the different homework. And they're like, wait a minute, no, they shouldn't. They should have the same experiences. So we got to get away from that. So, things like that. So really, and if you look at our literacy plan, we still have work to do. We're going to continue to add to it. This is a moving document, and I'll talk about literacy here in a minute, but this is our whole building improvement plan. Is based around frequent data checkpoints, having conversations and driving our instruction around data. And this is for K-8. it is different, like Dan said, you know, we have one 8th grade math teacher, we have one 8th grade English teacher. It's a little more difficult for them. Next year, I hope, if we're back to normal, we'll have some type of schedule where maybe our middle school math teachers all get to meet together. Because it's for them, their day is going to look different, and they don't have a person to call on to say, hey, what's going on, you know? But, so that's, I mean, really, if you look at that building plan, it's all driven through this. There is some little leader in me goals. We talked about it this morning. You know, and it is different. K4 especially, it's really different, you know, and what you want. And we really want to focus on the first 3 habits. First 3 habits is all about you growing as a person. Be proactive, set goals, and have a plan. Habit 3, put first things first. So that's how we're going to start attacking Leader in Me. And also this, if you click on guiding questions down there, that tab. So we've got some guiding questions in here. And I think this is probably the most important piece. You know, why did we not meet our instructional goals? Not about the kids. Why did we not meet our instructional goals? What are we going to do about the intervening for students who are still not proficient? How we accelerate? But, you know, then some of that, did we use the identified strategies? Do we need to abandon a strategy or strategies and choose others that might have a greater likelihood of being effective? We're in the middle of doing our DIBELS assessments right now, which is a dynamic indicators of early literacy skills. That's not right, but something like that. But it is highly predictive. The oral reading fluency piece, oral reading is highly predictive of success on state assessments. And I will say, I know Dave's doing it for the first time. I used to be an old reading Title I teacher, and I was a DIBELS junkie. And I'm reading with some 2nd graders, and I've done some 1st graders. And I want to get all the data. And next month, when I come back and I'll report on our literacy plan a little more, I want to show you a comparison where our kids were in the fall of 19 and where we are in the fall of 20. I'm kind of concerned, to be honest, with just a few kids I've tested. Just listening to them. And
how are we involving our families?
You mean with reading or just in general? You know, that's hard. That's hard right now because of, you know, we're not supposed to have volunteers. And it's hard right now with we need to do more. I mean, like I know I was in a 2nd grade classroom. They've already done some assessments, and they're putting kits together to go home with their kids to work on at home. We need to do more of that. And I think once I have this data and we can talk about the importance of the reading at home, some of the purchases we've made is really to do not just to help us at school, but to be remote if we have to go remote. Myon's a digital library that we've purchased to support literacy. You know, some of the things were, you know, so, you know, it's hard right now. I wish I had a better answer for you. I mean, I was thinking of that today as we were going through BLT and looking at that. You know, if you look at the gold standard for BLTs you have parents involved. And I know we met some we started to do parent advisory. I know I brought Lori in and we started looking at Leader in Me, and it'd been great to have Leader in Me. I would have loved to have 5 or 6 parents go through Leader in Me training to see what we're doing. Which I will tell you, I have an open enrolled parent who I talked to at kindergarten screening, and he's emailed me. I get these books of about how pumped up he is about Leader in Me. He's in corporate, and he's like, hey, I bought up my son all these books, and I'm thinking, he's in kindergarten, but he's like, we're doing it. What can I do? When are we doing 7 Habits of Highly Effective Families? Can I be on your parent team? And so we'll get there. I mean, it's still, it's hard because I worry about, right now the guidelines are limit your visitors and your volunteers. And I mean, we had our first issue today. Somebody didn't want to wear their mask, picking their kids up, and they handled it great, but
And
so,
listen, the only reason why I asked that
Yeah.
question is, I have a preschooler, so I'm wondering, in terms of assessment and what small steps can I do at
Yeah.
home? And I consider I'm fairly involved with what's going on, and I just don't know.
maybe we can do something virtually and do like here's some skills you can really work on at home. And,
Just family involvement's everything. Even pre-COVID, it is complicated, so.
yeah. And I will say, and I told Dan today, speaking of parent involvement, there is a lock on the new fences, gates that are going up, but they will be unlocked at all times unless we got, I don't know if we maybe keep them locked during the school day so people just don't wander in, but we'll make sure they're barred open at the end of the day, 'cause that's all we need to do is spend $1.2 million and lock it. It's haunted though, I will tell you that. But I was leaving about 10 o'clock Saturday night from doing work and I'm walking towards my truck and I hear this music coming off the playground. And I stop and look, and it stopped. I'd take a couple more steps, just start playing again. It was creepy. And it was lullabies. They were lullabies.
I figured it out, Jeff.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I
Okay.
ain't telling you.
So this drives our building plan. It is around uniform instruction, core instruction. Yeah, we're not abandoning STEM and those things, but we got to get back to our basics. If you look at the literacy plan, this is where we're trying to get that consistency. Some of this I put in there, yeah, we have a STEM designation, that's great, but if we don't take care of reading, it's going to be an issue. If you look at the root cause analysis on page 4 of the literacy plan, and this is from ODE, just completed this. Learners that start behind, stay behind is one of the big things they talk about in underperformance in Ohio schools. District infrastructure and support for educators. Districts challenge in providing effective support to educators. Instructional practices aren't the same, or they lack differentiation, or there's outdated special ed practices. I mean, we have decades of research and data that shows that pullout does not close the gap. Ability grouping does not close the gap. District and building culture of the district, so and I'll tell you about the literacy plan, we started meeting, we were meeting virtually, and then we picked a day in about mid-July or early July, and we got together and hammered this out. It was a little harder to do this virtually. I think we weren't as practiced at it yet, but when you hit on that, Constance, family knowledge and involvement. Families were not being appropriately leveraged as partners in literacy improvement. Specifically, families lack meaningful educator and family partnerships. So I will say this, for our remote learners, they're probably more connected than ever with their teachers because of their struggles. But, that's something to grow. If you want to scroll on down, Trenda, please. The 3 questions, and also when you look at gradual release of responsibility, when you look at a balanced literacy approach, you have a focused lesson. I do it. A guided lesson, we do it. Collaboration, you do it together. Independent, you do it alone. So when you look at a literacy classroom, you're going to have small group mini lessons or whole group mini lessons where maybe you're introducing that learning target. You have your guided lessons That's gonna be more individualized. That's gonna be your guided reading. We're gonna work on skills that this small group needs. Collaboration, which is always important. Kids are working together and sometimes they are working with the teacher. And then independent would be your independent work. It could be stations around skills. So that's heavily researched, that model. If you want to scroll down a little bit more.
More?
Yep, keep going. I can't read it. Can you read it on your copy? Probably not.
Yeah, we can.
Can you? Okay. So when you look at a pre-K2 balance, and this is heavy in K2, because that's where we have to start in K2. Not that the rest of the building, but modeled instruction. Instruction anchors the learning throughout the balanced literacy block. Okay? And interactive read alouds, discussions, mini lessons, shared practices, guided reading, shared and performance reading, shared writing. We don't do nearly enough writing either. We do a lot of worksheets to find out if they understand verbs and things like that. We have to get away from that. Dan told me, what was that book you mentioned the other day, the $1,000 pencil or something?
$6,000 egg.
Yeah, $6,000 egg, but independent work, again, is independent partner reading, responding to reading and writing. We can completely flip what we're doing by just doing more written responses to what we're reading. So that just, again, this is just the cycle. We're trying to hammer that home. So this is just kind of the modeled instruction, the shared practice, and the independent work. And that looks like an egg now. Look at it a little closer. But if you scroll down a little bit more. So again, formative and summative use to plan instruction. What we're going to do, like that template I showed you, I'm going to put all of our DIBELS data and all our STAR data. Each one of those columns will be a DIBELS indicator, and then it'll have some of our first quarter standards we're going to cover. I'm going to pull that out. We're going to look at it, and we're going to problem solve around it, plan some strategies, and then we're going to continue to revisit that. We're going to start, you'll see in here and in our building plan, we're going to give quarterly assessments. The STAR is great. I love the STAR, because it will measure growth. Our quarterly assessment is going to be, what did we teach this quarter that we're holding our kids accountable for, and we're accountable for them mastering? Then we should know right away how we're doing. And over time, we can look back as if we don't change those assessments and things, we'll get better and better at it. But, and again, at the end of the quarter, I can sit down with my grade level team and, I don't want to point fingers at people, but where were we successful at? Did somebody knock it out of the park and somehow I missed it, So, you keep going again, 3 questions. If you get into the very back, you'll see we talk about the instructional framework, 45 minutes of whole group modeled reading and writing instruction 5 days a week, 30 minutes of phonics 4 times a week, 60 minutes of small group 4 times a week, class meetings where they're having those discussions and doing that modeled reading and really 21st century literacy skills is going to be about, having discussions. The very back is links, and I'll share this with you, it's links to the instructional frameworks for each grade level and goes into more detail. And then just some of the other things that we're using. But questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will continue to add to this. We're going to work with our upper grades and hope this will be a K-8 plan before too long. And we're going to just continue to revisit it. And
No, can you clarify something for me, Chad?
Yeah.
You said something about the phones ringing directly into the classroom. Is that during class time?
Yeah. Especially right when there's a period change and parents are supposed to be logged in at 9:30. What happens is that the Google Classroom, if you don't they're trying not to be late, so maybe it's 9:20 and they're trying to log in, well, it says nobody's there. So what the first thing they do is they make a phone call.
Yeah.
And if you have the extension, you can dial right into the, so I'm trying to cut that off and tell them, call the office, we'll help you out. And, it's gotten better. It's getting better, and as parents have figured out, but there's still some that.
It'd be nice to have them kind of utilize the computer to share the question.
Yeah.
You know,
And-
there should be a way to do that.
And there's, it's just, it's a learning curve for them too. Dave, do you have anything to add? Well, you guys don't have anything. I don't know why, but I'm gonna go home and watch the Browns. Good luck.
Oh, but maybe you should assess them with some of this too, and they can
Well-
really use it.
Hey, I will also tell you one thing. We were looking for an interpreter and we hired, Nina Frederick, moved from Cleveland to be our interpreter, which I thought was nuts. But she loves the area. Today she emailed me at the end of the day. She's like, hey, I've been thinking, we could really include more people if you've seen my daily announcements, if I would do sign language for your daily announcements. So we're on a cycle. So tomorrow's my first one. I feel bad for her because I think the song I used was Celebration, and she's back here playing the guitar and she's doing the flute and everything else. But now she's signing our daily announcements, and just a good person. I thought, you don't have to do that. But so and I asked her, she said, it took me about 90 minutes. So anyway.
So one thing I would say before Chad leaves, first of all, good work. He kept referring to the 3 questions. The one thing that our learning culture is void of, we're not process dependent, we're person dependent. So if I went through the community and said, okay, your kid's gonna be in first grade, what teacher do you want? Second grade, third, everybody have a choice. The problem is everything differs from classroom to classroom at the same grade because we don't have processes in place. From whether we teach the same concept at the same time, we assess using it, we can't even so this is all about trying to get people process fit. Then Chad mentioned STEM a couple times. By a focus on literacy and a focus on math is no more ignoring STEM than implementing STEM was ignoring the importance of reading and math. They don't operate, it's not an either or. For that kid that can't stand to sit in the chair and learn the way this person does, STEM's a different way to engage kids, but we're still teaching literacy and we're still teaching math. It's not an either or. But absolutely, we talked about if Ohio calls their plan reset and restart, we're definitely on a reset because I can tell you that those 3 questions, you can track down every learning or instructional issue to a breakdown in those 3 questions. If number 1 is what do we want kids to know? Some people are basing their lessons off the model curriculum. Some are just basing it on, quite frankly, things they think are important. How do we know if they know it? Some people think we shouldn't test. Some people don't use assessment to guide the next steps in learning. And then the most important one, how do we respond to kids who get it or don't? There's 2 responses. Ed didn't get it, I've got to intervene. Kevin got it, he's ready to move on. That's the individualization of education that has to be present in 2020 and beyond. And quite frankly, starting about 1998. So we're making up, shock therapy is what our people constantly ask, how are our teachers doing? Shock therapy.
Yeah.
Okay, but I'm going to be real blunt, and I shared this with the staff today. Educators in general haven't moved a whole lot in the last 20 years. If we'd made gradual adjustments all along, this gap wouldn't have been impossible to jump. Our people are doing fantastic. We've jumped from 1990 to 2020 in a single bound. And it has been stressful, but they are doing fantastic. And we're going to be a whole lot further down the road because of having to make this jump through shock therapy if we ever had been just bubbling through with no urgency. So, but we are, I think our whole staff's doing a nice job of supporting. I tell you what, we're falling short in a couple places, and we know that we need to get better, and we're working on it. And today's 2-hour delay was fantastic. And if you remember when we discussed 2-hour delays, we said we need to leave September 17th in there because, and it was critical. So thanks, guys, and good luck.
Thanks. Thank you, gentlemen.
Good.
I have the minutes of our last meeting.
Any questions? Motion. Stotsberry, second.
Okay.
Laura?
Stotsberry,
Yes.
McRoy,
Yes.
Archer,
Yeah, you're fine.
Yes.
yes. Carpenter,
Yes.
McKee.
Yes.
I forgot, I gotta add one more thing. I have a kid that, I think Dan met him through an expulsion hearing last year, who is now on Phillips esports team. If you'd seen this kid this morning, get out of the car, I've never seen him that excited to come into school. And, you know, I was just asking him, I said, how's he doing over there? And to see him, I mean, he found me yesterday to ask about it, but, you know, talking about involving kids, I mean, it's pretty cool. So thanks to Philip and
It's
that
done.
opportunity.
Thanks, Phil.
Awesome stuff. So
That's
see
cool.
you guys. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
Sorry, I'm catching up. Financial reports. I have a copy of the financial summary for August. I have the disbursement listing for August. I have the cafeteria report from the nutrition group, and then I also have our cash basis cafeteria report, which includes July and August. I have a estimated receipt. I'm not sure why that didn't open. An estimated receipt modification. Maybe I have too many things open. And an appropriation modification. I see why it's having trouble. There's some, you guys probably can't open it either, can you?
No.
See at the extension where it says .pdf and there's some strange symbols after it?
I got it eventually.
Let me try this.
There's a download manager and it comes from the download manager. You have to show it in your folder.
Let me see if I can fix it real quick. Budgets and amendments. F2. Wait. Save. Okay, now I should be able to edit. Okay, I'm gonna delete the old one. So we'll all have to refresh our screens here in a second. And then I'm gonna attach the good one. I'm gonna hit save. Now, if you refresh your screens, you can hit F5. Well, the Chromebooks don't have F5, but if you click off onto another section and then click back on this one and try to open it again, it should open right away for you. And it should look like this. there's only one, and it's down here at the bottom with the student activity funds, and it's a decrease. And the reason for that decrease is the refunds that we're getting back from the class trip fund, we're classifying those as a reduction of expense instead of as a revenue. So we're decreasing the revenue. We won't need to estimate that as revenue coming in. It'll just be a reduction of expense. And that's the last thing. Did it open up better this time? Okay. Sorry about that.
Any questions? Motion? Motion. Carpenter, second.
Second.
Archer.
Carpenter?
Yes.
Archer?
Yes.
McElroy?
Yes.
Stotsberry?
Yes.
McKee?
Yeah.
I have our tax rates for your approval. This is no change from prior. It's the 4.7 inside and 25.8 outside. And I did attach a copy of the resolution because every year we like to discuss the fact that our levies, the age of our levies, which 1968 is our 5.0 continuing levy. 1969 is our 11.8 continuing levy. And 1992 is our 9.0 continuing levy.
Questions? Motion?
Motion.
Stotsberry, second.
Okay.
McElroy.
Stotsberry?
Yes.
We had a mistake here. Sorry about that. McElroy?
Yes.
Archer?
Yes.
Carpenter?
Yes.
McKee?
Yes.
I have a transfer for your approval. This is our $4 million transfer from the general fund to the permanent improvement fund.
Motion?
Motion.
Archer, second.
Second.
Stotsberry.
Archer?
Yes.
Stotsberry?
Yes.
Carpenter?
Yes.
McElroy?
Yes.
McKee?
Yes.
And then lastly, I have our contract for our compilation for your approval. This does reflect an increase over the prior year contract, which we had locked in a 3-year amount before. Was for 3 years in a row we paid 10,000 and it's 12,000 now. So, but I will say that it's well worth the increase in my humble opinion.
Humble.
Motion.
Why would they almost drop us?
It wasn't by any fault of our own.
Okay.
It was because of their scheduling and they just didn't have anybody. Actually, the auditor that we had last time will not be here this time. He took a job with public debt, and they were having trouble finding people for our area. And
I guess what do we do next year?
we'll see how this year goes.
Okay.
And then make an assessment and hopefully beg, plead, and borrow. The key is local government services works so well because they're both divisions of the auditor state's office, and when one follows the other, audits go so much more smoothly. We just don't have. And plus, part of my argument with them to begin with was we do everything we can to help make it smooth on our side. We're not problematic. We've never had any arguments or confrontations. We go out of our way to make sure scheduling wise, we give you space, we send, electronic things where we can. Plus with COVID happening and plus the fact that they didn't let me know until like July 2nd, which I'm only 2 days out of closing my fiscal year end. And I'm like, oh, this is not good timing. So anyway, they were very, Michelle Wares is her name, and she would, listen to my argument and said, let me see what I can do, shuffle some things and some people around, get back to you in a couple weeks. And I was very, very glad that they were able to get us on their book of business.
Motion,
Motion.
Archer second.
Archer,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
McElroy,
Yes.
Stotsberry,
Yes.
McKee.
Amen.
Okay, item 5.1 deals with personnel matters. Would ask for your approval for the following. You just see under Dyer, Chad spoke about is already in place, subbing for Lindsay Smith. Peggy Ferguson is in addition, several areas. Lake and Fiegel will be working the A scheduled days when Mike Waite is in need of a sub, and then we're still kind of doing the B side of the days. We're still looking for a more permanent solution there, but we're close to that. You see the other things listed there?
Motion,
Motion.
McElroy second.
Second.
Stotsberry.
McElroy,
Yes.
Stotsberry,
Yes.
Archer,
Yeah.
Carpenter,
Yes.
McKee.
Item 5.2, business matters. You see a host of August policy adoptions that we have, and a lot of those changes that we notice deals with issues when related to Title IX or sexual harassment. For your information, I am the Title IX officer, so if you have something like that, please follow the policy directed to me. I know it's weird. I know. A lot of people were shocked. We're once again going to be involved in the transportation agreement, East Guernsey and Cambridge. I will tell you that the total number of kids leaving our high school as of today is actually different than what you have in your enrollment update. It's already changed. 38 total students going to Mideast, be it Buffalo or Zanesville.
That's all it's leaving there.
So
Was 54 to last year?
I think so. It's just really dropping each year.
Motion, Carpenter second.
Second.
Archer.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Archer,
Yes.
McElroy, Stotsberry,
Yes.
McKee.
As a note on our policies, I believe just this week I got to review every one of them and in real life situations. And that's no joke. So that's no kidding. Item 5.3 as we proceed and talk about 5.4, and you might want to reverse these. I didn't anticipate there were any issues, but likely phase 4 approval would be important to have before we approve item 5.3. But we would like, Trent and I both are recommending that we continue to utilize the services of our Criterion architect, Al Berger from AJB Consultants. And he works as we keep narrowing down phase 4. Al is actually our representative who makes sure that all the criteria that we develop is actually constructed as per specs. And I think Trent would agree has been a tremendous asset.
Yes.
having a criterion architect in a House Bill 153 design build is a requirement. Since we're doing this through a different funding through energy efficiency project, it is not a requirement, but we think it's still a good practice.
He brings a lot to the table, and during our construction meetings, he's the one that kind of is the in-between person between me and Dan and the construction team, and holding them accountable to line item specific things, and just, I feel like it's driving the cost down because of that. Very easy to talk to, very easy to work with, but high level expertise. And in a wide variety of things, right, Dan? Like he can go from talking about plumbing to it's just crazy, his level of knowledge, so.
Now, I would say, I have not heard any, but if anybody has any concerns on phase 4, then we probably should jump down to 5.4 first.
I just flipped them on the agenda.
Yeah, that's fine. We can so let's talk about phase 4 construction. As you can see, there's a resolution there attached, and there's also a final pricing sheet. Now, even though we say final, today we met for 3 hours just talking about criteria. So after our construction meeting around phase 3, Al and I and Dave and Justin, we went through every nook and cranny that we see in phase 4 to make sure we get all those things included. So this is the maximum price, but I still think that there's likely, so for example, the furniture. That furniture represents one quote. Okay, but the other thing that I would tell you is, remember it's 2020 and we're replacing furniture that was purchased in 1963. Typically what people do, they put their furniture on a annual rotation. They might do 1 or 2 classrooms a year, and they will. We really have not done that officially. So much like I would tell folks, and Constance and I were talking, we had to do those lab renovations in the front hall, in the back hall, and they serve a lot of kids, but not all kids. The front hallway serves all kids because that's where social studies, science, math, English, not science, science is in the back hall. Plus it also includes a major renovation in the auditorium. So there's a lot of things here, and I think it's also important to remember when you look at the price, if you go back to 2010, the last time we looked at a bond issue, and you looked at a local share, and remember that included 100% of all the furnishings. That includes, that's all inclusive. So when I look at this, I think the scope of work for what's really over 50% of our building, plus LED lighting inside and out, plus locker room renovation down, I think it's coming in at a pretty good price. So,
The pass-through window, what is that?
Okay, great question. So what we want to do in both of our offices, let's start at the high school.
So that, I just see that's for K-8 though, is that for high school as well?
So, yeah, so there's 2 things happening. I could probably just show you, but you asked about the middle school, didn't you first, Kevin?
Well, I just seen K-8 on there.
Okay, so
it's an awful expensive window. But
here's the elementary office. Here's the hallway that goes in front of the counter. And here you have multiple doors. Okay, this is the one that's walled off, the security entrance right here. We want parents or whomever, let's say they're picking up Johnny, we want them to be able to come right here. We want to put a window here, so they never have to enter the building.
So they're just gonna be in that little walled off place.
Yep. So that's going through that brick wall, and that's creating one. So oftentimes what will happen, somebody will buzz, well, I'm here to see Freddie. Oh, come on in. Well, they go all the way in there, and then we tell them, well, sorry, Freddie's in class. So there's just no reason to have that much traffic going into this building when we really just don't need to. They're picking a kid up, the kid's already sitting right here, you can sign in, we can send the kid out.
They're dropping something off.
Yeah, Johnny forgot his football helmet. I think it's just gonna keep a lot of this traffic from actually getting in the office. Because that's, as you know, pretty open area right here where there's a lot of traffic, the nurse's office, there's just a lot of kids there and there's just a lot of traffic. And quite honestly, people are comfortable. They come in, they're walking around the back. Like, I think we could really eliminate some traffic. Now, at the high school, it's a much bigger project. You'll see there, it's called office redesign. So, this marker's not working. Let me grab another. I think this will be helpful.
I know version 1 is what I've been just reviewing and comparing it to this quote. And it looks like you have, I mean, there are scope in general increase with LED lighting.
A lot of it calls the outside, yeah.
Okay.
And then, so let's go back to the office redesign. Here's the lobby at the high school. You come in here, the current offices are right here. We want to come in and actually put another set of doors here. Then we want to open this up for the same reasons that we're talking about at the elementary. We want to be able to move where this is currently a teacher's lounge, we want to make this the offices so that we have that same opportunity here. A parent doesn't have to come all the way into the high school, have free reign into the hallway to go wherever. They're going to come in here. All their office business happens here unless they have an appointment or they have some reason to come into the school building. It's a little more complex here because we don't have that one wall. So really what you're talking about is you're talking about flipping the office complexes to the teacher's lounge area and vice versa.
And now you're really highlighting on the office redesign, right?
Yes. So on that, when you talk about pricing, we've put there a maximum price. You understand, we're not to the point yet where we've got architectural drawings because when you start asking someone to put an architectural design and drawing together, you're incurring costs. So we're not incurring costs. The first thing that we'll incur cost on, the LED lighting project, will start in October. So
this, in theory, the savings from our utilities going down helps pay for the project.
This is, I mean, literally on the bottom of your list, Ann, but now we were talking about right across the bridge. I stood there after the last home game, last Friday?
Mm-hmm.
That light will go off for long periods of time, and then it'll go back on for like a minute or two and light up that bridge, and then it'll go completely off.
yeah, it's not functioning properly.
No,
And that's part of the outside.
it's pitch black over there too.
So that was actually part of the heat group. So we have not had energy optimizers do that. And she and I were trying to figure it out the other day because we didn't think we had the LED light was working across the bridge and then it would come on and then,
We're like, oh, it's fine.
oh, it's all good. So
is that adding any more lights outside?
Is it-
a lot of lights outside around the elementary and around the playground. Remember when we took the walk that night, we talked about each one of those coves? We're gonna do that, plus we're gonna do some wall packs all the way around that building, so we have lighting around the whole thing. It's not any more poles or parking lot lighting.
Is that window gonna be, I like the design at the high school, the one, I guess, at the elementary, I just can't wrap my head around. You're gonna have a window right next to the door? Or is it
Yeah,
down?
yeah, it's right. Guy, it fits. I don't remember the dimensions, but if I'm walking in the door and we have the showcase here, then you have a space. That's where the window's gonna be, and the door is right here. It's not a large window. I mean, it's probably Probably similar to a drive-through window.
It'll be on this side of that, where the, desk or the table.
Yeah.
Cause it'd be on that side of it, so they can just open the window. Okay.
Yeah, and when you're on the visitor side, I'll call it, you're gonna be standing between the showcase and the door going into the office.
Oh, yeah.
Good idea. A lot of people.
Well, I mean, you think about here. Somebody comes in the door
Yeah.
for a purpose, then old Freddie yells at them down here by the gymnasium, next thing you know, there could be people in it.
Yeah, I like this here, Tracy.
By the way, I forgot to ask you, our,
Because if it continues.
surveillance at the sheriff's office was.
Oh.
I wonder if it is now.
Do you have a list of additional site work we need to consider?
For what, Constance?
Just in general?
I don't yet. I'm kind of waiting to have that conversation with Josh. I mean,
Okay.
so when you think about finances, moving forward with this, plus wherever we may land up on the ag side of things, I probably wouldn't anticipate any more PI expenditures, because I think whatever that we would encounter next, whatever we would choose to do next, would not happen until the next transfer to.
So in theory, we're saving
So
like
the-
half of a transfer amount.
Yeah, so this is our opportunity to try to build that balance while we plan and we get all the information we need to make the next best decision, because the next things, regardless, if you talk about an addition, possibly, let's just say a 7th and 8th grade, that takes some study. I mean, there's 10,000 variables, that we would have to consider just in having the conversation, whether that was proven or not. And, I could tell you some educational, things that make it from that side a no-brainer. But I also think that we really have to look at census data. I think we have to look at what is our reasonable amount of growth.
That's
Because-
something I feel flooded with because of my inability to prioritize because there's so much.
Yeah, so what's interesting, and we're really proud of our growth,
It's a good model.
okay, but here's the reality of that situation. We grew after a big deficit.
Yeah.
You asked for it.
So then the reality of it is, even though we've grown by several hundred students, our total enrollment is just now back up to where it was 7, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I just think making a decision like that takes more time.
Yeah.
That's not something you're gonna do in an expedited manner like this. That's gonna require more planning. No, sir. Something like getting the bus garage out of the back of the high school, possibly moving it across the street, is something obviously that could happen quicker than doing something like an addition.
But is it a priority?
Yeah, but that's part of that discussion, I think, when Josh, gives us his report and we can have this conversation. So one of the things that we have with Josh is, we need to decide before we leave tonight. We want to just set that up for the October meeting to spend some time on that, or do we want to set a separate date where we can just focus on that?
I think it deserves a separate date.
Have like a work session meeting where we're.
Yeah.
So I have some dates for you, and,
Can't wait.
I said sarcasm.
While you're thinking about dates, I pulled this up so that you could kind of visualize the PI fund. This is what our balance, this is what our actual cash balance is, okay? To date, we have purchase orders, outstanding encumbrances right here. So actually, our unencumbered balance is right here, 1.4 million. Now tonight, we transferred, we approved the transfer for 4 million. So that's gonna be plus 4. So you're gonna be up to 5.4 million. We approved the $2 million, additional expense for phase 4. So subtract 2 million off of that,
Because our encumbrance last month was 3.3. Okay.
just to give you a little bit of a idea where we're at. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Plus 250,000 for the farm, or minus, I should say. Minus, I don't know what else, but just,
Those are the first 2 dates that he gave me. Besides, those are both Mondays.
Good.
How's October 5 look like?
What time?
Terrible.
Terrible?
I'm good, there. Let me know what time.
We can set it whenever. 8 o'clock?
October 5th is a Monday.
We better start earlier than 8 o'clock. You'll be back to Columbus at 5 a.m.
Yeah, I'll just move
You said anytime.
You guys come.
I was lying.
How's that? Meet me up there.
But anyway, let's don't lose where we are here on phase 4.
All right. Are you done on phase 4?
Unless there's more questions.
We're gonna vote on 5.4, phase 4 construction. I need a motion.
Motion.
Carpenter, second.
Second.
Who was it?
Carpenter.
Archer.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Archer,
Yes.
McElroy,
Yes.
Stoltzberry,
Yes.
McKee.
Yes. Now we're gonna go back to 5.3, AJB Engineering Consulting. Is everybody good with that? Motion.
Motion.
Archer, second.
Okay.
McElroy.
Archer,
Yes.
McElroy,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Stoltzberry,
Yes.
McKee.
Yes. Now we're gonna go back to the date plan.
Yeah, so as
The fifth
October
works for me, I got work at 12.
6 p.m.
I'm good.
We go 6:30.
I don't care.
6:30. I already said 6. I'll just leave him at 6. Doesn't matter. We can start at
Maybe
6:30.
like.
As long as we're good.
October
It could be
5th.
in the evening then.
What we calling that?
I'd just call it the site feasibility or site
Where are we
planning.
doing that here?
We'll just do it right here. Is that good? Are you more comfortable over? You okay here? I think it's better for him if he's got stuff to show us. We need.
He seems to like this place.
Yeah, Plaza sounds good.
I second that.
We said 6:30?
We can drag a little
You
more
said
into the
6.
plaza, right?
6:30.
Oh, 6, I'm sorry, I
I did say 6:30, but you just said we're gonna leave it at 6, and I told him 6. Make up my mind.
6 o'clock.
I won't be here at 6 o'clock.
I'll send everybody
He's got my
The biggest change in phase 4, by the way, is the scope that's in the auditorium compared to what we previously scoped in
It
phase
needs to be
3.
done. God, it needs to be done.
Well, it would have been done in phase 3. The problem is the costs were just astronomical, and quite frankly, the scope really got skewed beyond what I think we needed. So we just put the brakes on. I think we're looking
I'm appalled by the curtains alone.
at,
I feel like we can get a hold of the Amish or something.
Get a bunch of dresses. So,
No, just so something up for that.
hey,
That's a lot.
I'd say the two
Nice.
things that shock me always in the school business are stage curtains and,
That's unreal.
like double doors going into gymnasiums, auditorium. Unbelievable.
Like even low and it's
Are
unreal.
the seats gonna be padded? Are we gonna-
Yes.
are they gonna be wider?
You know what? That's funny you should say that because that chewed up about 30 minutes of our conversation today.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it?
We're gonna have options. We're gonna have options. I think that, well, I think the choice is, we were just talking today about, the fewer seats that you put back in there, the wider, the nicer you can make them, but then what's the, diminishing return on that? So we're gonna have options.
You done?
I am done, yes.
Okay, vocational report. And,
Less students going?
Lucy, have anything else to add? Legislative report, anybody got anything?
Didn't that bill pass?
House Bill 606 passed. House Bill 258 is, I'll be giving testimony on 258, and quite frankly, I need a few minutes here.
Okay.
We shoot ourselves as educators because we are so quick to denounce testing. If anybody brings up testing, we don't want it. We don't want it. Okay, we don't want it, and quite frankly, we don't want to do anything to substitute for it. So let me back up from that statement a minute. So 258 says there'll be no state mandated testing. I think we all agree that's a good thing. However, on federal testing requirements, the federal government has said no testing means no funding. Okay, so there's some argument there. I don't think anyone would disagree, I would hope not in education, that it'd probably be a good idea to assess some students to clearly understand what the gap is after COVID.
How do you not?
If you're not, exactly. So we have a chance, we have two choices to make as educators. We can stand over here and just say, hey, I'm anti-test, I don't want them, they're stupid, it's crazy. Or we can embrace the fact that good instruction and learning is a result of good assessment. Assessment's not the end. See, that's the year we all grew up in, where assessment was the end. I got an A or I got a D. Now it's just the beginning. You assess first to find out where everybody is in the room, and then you try to take them from point A to B based on those assessment results. So I had 120 superintendents at the chorus meeting the other day. This topic came up through a legislative update. And I had also been on a call with the National Superintendents Group, who focuses more on the federal side, and they were encouraging us, let's jump on board and really, promote the federal testing piece so that we can accurately, when we say our kids lost X amount because of COVID, that we can give a real number, not just that, well, I think. Crickets. Not one comment. Not one taker. Nothing. I said, well, I'd like to, just when our legislative liaison got done, I said, well, I would just like to share that a result was of discussion in San Diego and then continues after COVID. We can't just say we don't want testing. What we better at least say, Stacey Gatos put out something a couple days ago that was spot on. She gave a pre-assessment. And the results were really not what she expected. They were much better.
Really?
If she would say for that group of kids, their gap due to COVID was not at all what she expected. So what I was trying to implore everybody else yesterday was, it's okay if we want to say we don't want testing, but we better be able to step up and say what we're doing to find out that information. If we take control of this, we can control it. But if you just want to say no testing, that's why we have testing. That's exactly why we have all this accountability.
In place.
Yeah, because we never said, well, here's how we instruct. We never said, hey, these are the 3 questions. We use assessment regularly. Let's tout our own information. No, one word. Nobody. And all they want to do is say no. Well, that's not, we're way past that. You know what I mean? So 258 is going to be the next big one. And it would eliminate a lot of state, it doesn't really address the federal, a lot of the state testing requirements, much like happened last spring because of COVID.
So is this the 258, is this forever or just during the pandemic?
Just for this year, I believe, because it's an extension also of not having a report card. So, but that's those two. The 606 was a huge thing that gives us kind of immunity from legal actions that, basically say I contracted COVID because I went to school, or I contracted COVID because I went to the ball game, or so it's just a COVID immunity.
Will change the report card, how it looks?
Yeah, I think we have a real opportunity. I think if every district's staff would really try to step up and do what our folks are trying to do, and we can come out of this saying, hey, we are professionals and we can manage this and we can be accountable to our kids' learning, I think we could change it. I think those people that want to sit on the sideline and just say, we don't want this and we don't want that, and furthermore, we're not going to report how we're doing anything differently, then we'll continue with having that accountability piece.
What do you think, the state will back out of it any? Turn more towards like ODE?
I think ODE might back out of it a little bit of the testing piece, especially now, just because of the cost, statewide cost, and the fact that people could lay a lot of claims that money could be better served somewhere else. I think during this time, quite frankly, I think our legislature, state representatives have been very positive. I think they've worked well. I really do think that they've kept things in perspective. But the federal piece is a different animal. So I think those are the two, not to interrupt, those are the two big ones that have been dominating all of our time.
Well, you're on the roll, you want to go ahead and do your ending?
It's Capitol Conference on,
It's all virtual.
yeah, I mean,
Capitol Conference is virtual.
You told me I didn't have to go last night.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good.
I just want to work those days now.
The only thing I had under superintendent's report, as I just have attached there, the most recent enrollment update for you all to look at. And I can tell you that was like 2 days ago and it has changed already.
Wow. So Dave was saying a lot of people are coming off remote and coming back. Is that at the high school too? Or just more so the
It's
lower grades?
more so at the lower grade, because the high school, we had pretty low number already. And we had fewer than 20 when we started. We're probably down to probably 10 or 12 now.
I would say it's gonna keep coming up.
The other thing we're gonna do, no later than the first 9 weeks, we're gonna bring in, you heard him talk, but we're gonna bring in every kid and talk about how you've done on remote and whether or not you should continue, whether it's a potential truancy issue, a performance issue. We're just gonna.
Or like the one I talked to, the parents are sick of it being at home.
So we have 35 more kids on campus.
You go back,
My
what was
kid
the
said,
big,
"Hey, we got a new person today."
what grade had the biggest jump?
We don't have it broken down by grade there. Oh, over here. I have that on another sheet.
we have it by category, but not by grade level.
Yeah, that's good.
Trenda, what you got?
45 more.
I have, that summary of real estate, settlements that I've been promising you for second half, because our Monroe County settlement was received recently on September 16th, actually, yesterday. So I went ahead and put all three settlements on here for you in order of significance. Noble County's first, Monroe County second, Guernsey County third, and in terms of our forecast, we're very close. What we expected. And then I also have a set of charts for you. The first slide just talks about, it's like an overview of what we went over last month. And like I said in the email, it kind of gave us, laid some groundwork for us. And then tonight, so I have for you some our expenditures as a district by object level. And I gave it to you both as a district in total and as broke down on a per student level. And they're all color coded, nice, you're gonna be very impressed. The next one is at the function level, also same way, district as a total and at the student, as a per student level. And then third at the sub-function level. And then lastly, I have some transportation expenditure slides for you just to have food for thought. And then something to look forward to for next month, I'll move on from transportation and we'll talk about maintenance. And then the following month, maybe we'll do food service and then the following month. So we'll just pick one, or I will pick one, or if you have a preference, you can tell me. But, so we'll just keep sliding through here. This is just overview of what we talked about last time. So I'm gonna.
This is pretty self-explanatory.
Okay, so expenditures by object level. Now remember, object level is salaries, benefits, supplies, materials, and capital outlay and other. And they're all color coded for you, and you can refer back to these. This is salary, this orange is salaries over time. These are your years starting in 2007. Okay, and these are your dollar amounts. Okay, so we got salaries, we got benefits, we got purchase services are red, we got purple is supplies and materials, capital outlay. Now remember, those are your, individually they cost more than $500 a piece and they have a useful life of more than 5 years. Those criteria are the brown, and then this gold, you'll kind of see you don't have that anymore. 700 object codes were done away with. So they used to be capital outlay replacement, but now it's just all capital outlay. So gold and brown is really what brown is today. So this is the district as a whole, our expenditures for the whole year. This chart over here in the bottom takes this to a per student level. So last time we talked about this per student expenditure amount of $22,000. Remember, that's general fund only. And we put by year, 2007 to 2019. We looked at what our average was over all those years. Okay, but this was all one color last time. And someone brought up the question of, well, what's the breakdown of that? So that's what this tells you. This blue is on a per student level, remember. This is personal services, that's your wages and benefits, okay? And then the orange, I'm sorry, that's just wages. Orange is your benefits. Red is your purchase services. Blue is your supplies and materials. Kind of faded up here. I hope it's clearer on yours. Green is your capital outlay, and gold is those other capital outlay items from before. And then the 900s, those are your our transfers.
PI fund, you mean?
PI, yeah, transfers to the PI, those large $4 million transfers, transfers to food service, transfers to athletics, those kind of things.
So turn over question. So the 22,000 per student, I mean, that seems like a lot, but it's probably because of all of the improvements we're doing.
Yep, because see this big purple chunk right here?
Yeah.
Okay. We made large transfers to the out of the general fund and into the PI fund. So, and that's why it stands out. So over the last how many years? 19, 18, 17, a little bit in 16. How much did we do that before? Hardly any. So it kind of really puts things in perspective, where we were and how far we've come, in my opinion.
So that will probably change over the years too, as we continue to wrap up our improvements. And
it'll be interesting to watch that trend over time, because you know our in our forecast we've spelled it out and we said we plan on doing $4 million transfers as long as we can. So
Constance asked the question earlier, like,
okay, how do you defend this to your community? Well, one of the ways you defend it is, and Trenda and I are talking about this. First of all, you pay 55% less tax to begin with, and you're getting all these building improvements without passing a levy. So we're still further protecting your taxes and you know what I mean? We're making investments today for 50 years down the road, like the people did in 1963 for us today, and we're doing it at no additional cost for you.
Exactly. Back in 2007, $6,400. And that was a lot of money back then. Like that was a pretty tight budget. Some other interesting anomalies just by looking at this chart. You might want to, why did the capital outlay, why do we have a large gap here in 2016? Well, in 2015, we bought like 3.5 buses that year. So in 2016, we took a break. And then in 2017, we went back up again. And then we kind of leveled out and we went back up again in 2019. And of course we did in 2020 too. By the way, if anybody's curious why 2020 is not on the chart yet, I might have mentioned this before. I don't remember, but we just ended our fiscal year, June 2020. So that data actually hasn't been exported out there yet. So, but it will be hopefully soon. Okay, and then the next slide. Okay, this is the one that I mentioned that's by function level. So functions are a little bit different. Okay, this is where we're talking about instructional, regular instruction. So that's this purple color. Actually, it's all instruction, sorry. The next slide, the detailed function level gives you a further breakdown. But okay, so instruction is purple. Supporting services is all this red. Non-instructional services, that's your 3,000, that's like your food service and some of the non-instructional related. 4,000 is your extracurricular activities. Those are your student activity funds, your athletic funds, facilities, acquisition and construction services, it is what it says it is. Debt service, anytime we would have any debt, we had House Bill 264 debt, but we're almost out of that. And then other uses of funds, that's where your transfers, advances, those kind of things go. So over time, again, kind of the same picture, nothing unexpected here. This takes that same $22,000 per student and breaks it down to the function level. Then the next slide is the one you're going to find very interesting. And not just because there's more colors, but this is where we take that instruction piece and we say regular instruction, special instruction, vocational instruction, very important. And we're going to be watching that over time because of all the additional programs we're adding now to the vocational with the farm and all that. We don't have adult ed. It's just other interesting categories. So if you go all the way up here to the 2800s, that's transportation. So you can pick a category that you're interested in. You might want to look at fiscal. That's anything that's done in the business office. So like my section. Administration might be important to you. The Board of Education. Maintenance. That's this blue here. What else? Food service might stand out to you. Site improvements, transfers, advances. But again, the main structure of the graph, didn't really change, so that's all.
Why did maintenance take a spike at 18 and 19?
That's this blue area right here.
Why?
And we're going to be focusing on that on our next month presentation.
Back
off.
Sorry.
I mean, I can, yeah.
Segue.
And so that one particular category of transportation, we've got that broke down. I broke it down by, this is all funds. And I wanted to show you this way because of this one anomaly. And Mr. Leffing will know what this is about based on the year, 2015. But this is all funds, okay? So it's general fund, PI fund, grant funds. And what we do in 2015, well, we had the huge Fund 466. It was through the ESC where we actually were the fiscal agent for the transportation program. That's where we got all the new GPSs and all the new badge system and all that. So that's why you see a huge increase in purchase services during 2015. But in the next one, I took that out. And I said, okay, without that, without the grant funds, here's general fund and PI fund only. And so you can see it's not quite so dramatic of a change. Makes things look a lot better. Orange is salary, green is benefits, red is purchase services, purple is supplies and materials, and brown is capital outlay. Then I took a few particular screenshots of sections I thought you might find interesting. So overtime was one. That's the first one. Tires, that's a very large portion of the transportation expense. Fuel. And buses and vans. And then purchase services, which the red is the purchase services, and supplies, which is in the purple color. And I kind of grouped those together just to kind of show, you know, in theory, if you do a project in-house, you would buy supplies to fulfill that project. If you are hiring it done outside, it's considered a purchased service. So some things we have to send out to get done, and some things we do in-house. And this just kind of...
Does that surprise you?
We do most of it ourselves.
Yeah, are you surprised by that, Guy?
For transportation?
No, well, I just think that's a good relationship, I think.
Yeah, I think yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know what I would have thought.
It looks like what your subcontracted work or purchase services is about, 15 to 20% of what your total.
Right. Probably.
In-house. And that's a good, probably a very good.
Yeah.
Equilibrium, or equal, breakout, I guess you should say. As far as, like, what we do in construction.
In today's world, I can't believe anything higher. You know,
That surprised me.
there's a lot of stuff. Our boutique mechanics sits over there, you know what I mean? Not that I'm taking anything.
No,
away.
I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, we do that much.
Yeah.
There's one more anomaly that I wanted to point out, and I've got so excited about the grant thing, I forgot to point out. You might notice, this kind of takes away from it, but you might notice that this orange personal services was a lot higher here in 2016, and then it went back down. So your mind might be like, well, we had a really big retirement that year when, and then, and those severance packages are considered a salary. Surprisingly, it's not a benefit, it's actually a salary, so. Anyway, I thought I would point that out in case you were looking at it later and wondered.
Well, I think that's been explained very well with, how the Dan does say, okay, hey, here's how we save by this position going here, or, with this people retiring, and we can have these services, or, and a lower cost, and it's always explained well, so that's.
I think it
that
helps
doesn't
put it all
surprise-
in perspective.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me on that sort of level.
What about overtime, Dan? What do you think about that?
Well, that was overtime related just to transportation, correct?
Correct.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah, but I will tell you, I would think that the tendency would be overtime would be up because
Yeah.
you have two choices. I'd rather pay you overtime than give you comp time.
Yeah, they got that.
Okay, and earlier it used to be just the opposite.
And there's been and you see how that's been climbing over time, and a major reason for that is, the substitutes. The shortage on substitutes, I should say. Because then what happens is, some of your mechanics and some of your custodians and some of your, whoever are coming over and working for, serving as a substitute. Well, their overtime is on transportation because their regular job.
That makes sense.
The tire cost going down is tremendous.
Which one?
The tire cost,
Yeah, we had a really big spike and then now it's come down, but, it'll be interesting to see when we get to 2020, because even though school
Yeah.
stopped, the buses didn't stop.
right,
So
that'll be interesting to see how that.
it will be.
Yeah.
And of course, fuel, fuel prices came down, but they're starting to trickle back up again. So we got to keep a close eye on that.
Good stuff.
Thanks, Linda.
Excellent.
Thanks, Brenda, that's awesome.
Thanks for the colors, that makes it easy for me to understand.
That's awesome.
Great work, Brenda.
So where's your comfort that,
Oh, boy, what?
Like I presented at, Gold Button.
We're not having an executive session.
All right, motion to adjourn.
Yep.
Salisbury, second Carpenter.
Salisbury?
Yep.
Carpenter?
Yes.
Archer?
Yes.
McElroy?
Yes.
McKee?
Yes.
Okay.
We're done.